Welcome to the Creation Innovation Podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth King. Together, we'll have conversations with incredible human beings who have taken their creative outlet and turned it into something innovative. From people leaving the corporate world to be 8-figure entrepreneurs to people who have created books, created a family, or just creating to have fun in the world. We are all in a journey to create something amazing in our lives, and I hope that you find some inspiration of your own here. This is the Creation Innovation Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Creation Innovation Podcast. Today I am honored to have a recent graduate from FCA, Fertility Coach Academy, I should say, Irene Ycaza from Ecuador. So she's representing our Latin community. Welcome, Irene.
Hi, Elizabeth. Such a pleasure to be here with you today.
I am so excited to talk about this because I feel like in our bubble of the United States, people don't recognize the worldwide how many Latin speaking countries there are. And, you know, it changes, of course, whether you're in Europe speaking Spanish or South America or whatnot. But even still, a lot of the overall philosophies around Latin countries and all of that are pretty similar. So today we are going to kind of dive into some of the things that fertility-based countries that speak Spanish, Latin-based countries, would be facing versus what we may know in the United States. So first, let's hear a little bit about your story, if you don't mind sharing for our audience today, of how you came to become a fertility coach and what led you on this path.
Yes, of course. I was diagnosed with infertility 5 years ago when I was 35 years old. The first step here, my journey was prior to that. When I was 34, I went to the doctor, like feeling really responsible and saying, I want to start a family. So I'm ready. What should I take? What should I drink? And let's have babies. And a year went by where nothing happened. And here, now that I know, I could have done a lot of tests prior to having my year to be diagnosed with infertility, because I have PCOS and my husband has low motility in his sperms. So we were never going to get pregnant naturally, you know?
Right. Now, is it common for you to be proactive to do that? Is that normal, or is it most people in your country or Spanish speaking countries? Because I know in the US, we're always told, like, be careful, you're going to get pregnant if you have sex. Nobody tells you that it's very, you can only get pregnant in certain times of the month and whatnot. So what made you think maybe I should go to the doctor and find out what I need to be doing? Did you have an idea that perhaps something was wrong?
No, I did not have an idea. I was married for 3 years then. So I was like, I am going to prepare myself. We weren't that careful because we were already married, but there was this idea. They gave me birth control pills because of my PCOS prior to getting married. And they were like, don't worry, once you leave them, you're going to get pregnant so fast. There's this myth that when you leave birth control, you are really fertile on the next month and you're going to get pregnant like this.
Okay.
And that did not happen. So I was like, okay, maybe I should go and just ask what the steps are, because evidently I'm not getting pregnant just doing it the old-fashioned way, you know? So I went to the doctor and he told me that since I'm younger than 35, I should have regular sex, unprotected sex for a year before considering any other option.
Even though you had a diagnosis already of PCOS.
I had the diagnosis, but he was like, yeah, but your numbers are normal right now. Maybe they weren't optimal, but you're fine. You're in a good, you have a good weight. You're healthy, even though I had this. So let's just go with take prenatals, folic acid, and go have fun.
And is PCOS commonly spoken about in South America, would you say?
Now that I know more about it, after your course, obviously, I don't think it's very well explained. You know that PCOS is a metabolic problem. It is a diagnosis that not necessarily consists of you having cysts in your ovaries.
Correct.
But
Yes.
you can have other signs of an issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were just like, you have this, take your birth control, and now, and metformin. I took metformin as well, and now you're fine. And at that time, we didn't have that much access to internet as we do now. So I was like, I'm following doctor's orders.
Yes.
And people here think that, yes, I hear a lot of young girls say that, yes, I have PCOS, so that's why I'm taking birth control. Like, it's really something cool and that's fine. And it's like, you have no idea what you're doing to your body. I did not have an idea of what I was doing to my body. So that year went by, and I think emotionally it's really a burning year, you know, because sex goes from being something pleasurable and fun to being something you have to do on certain windows, on certain. So I did everything everybody sent me to do. Like, you have to have sex every day of the month. You have to have sex skipping one day.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to raise your hips,
Legs.
like, to help and I did not raise my legs. I did handstands after having sex. You know? I was like, after the 6 months, I was like, there is something wrong here, and take maca, drink maca, take this tea and whatever, or have this. And it was all like these crazy things I was doing, but there was nothing like a guidance and a north and things well done, you know?
Right.
After the year, our relationship was burned out. We were not pregnant, obviously. And we started this path. I never heard of the word infertility before leaving it. And you feel like you're thrown off a cliff, like, good luck. And yeah, that's sometimes it happens. That was the answer doctors would give to me many times. And then I went from my normal gynecologist to the reproductive clinic and started all these exams and trials to understand what I have. But it was a diagnosis that I already knew, because I already had insulin resistance and PCOS.
Right.
What was new was that my husband had also problems to conceive.
Right.
And was never going to be able to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Thing is, if the doctor would have sent us to have a spermatogram earlier on, we would have stopped this. We would have been earlier on with the process, right?
Yeah, and I know that's controversial because I always tell people those are exact examples of why I think we shouldn't wait 6 months or a year. Just go get the lay of the land, see what's happening with both of you, so you know your starting point, right? If somebody tells you wait 6 months or a year, you've just, in some cases, wasted 6 months or a year, right? When you could have really prevented this if you had known from the get-go. And I think more doctors are becoming more open to just running those tests ahead of time. But I mean, I will say it that I tell people this, tell the doctor you've already been trying, even if you haven't, right? Because just get a starting point. And Irene is not unusual in her story. There are so many people that I have worked with that have a very similar story, and they may have already been going a year more, 3 years to some people, because they didn't actually go to the doctor until later because they thought, well, I'm young, I'm just going to keep trying, only to find out there was blocked tubes or sperm issues or whatnot. So I am really a believer, even though it goes against, medical advice, to get in to see a doctor right away before you are going to start trying, so you know what you're working with.
And the lay of the land, the exams are so simple. They're maybe uncomfortable, but they're simple. So you can do them and say, okay, my husband's sperms are in really good condition. I have a good ovarian reserve. We know that in fertility, there's a lot of other aspects that are involved in. Yeah. But having your test done, it's like the fastest and best way to know where you're standing.
Right.
So I do believe, and now with my clients, it's like I have clients that have not been diagnosed with infertility, but I tell them, like, just go get your test done and we'll start from there. Because during an infertility treatment, you have this emotional roller coaster. So starting with fresh, knowing that, okay, my husband has issues with his sperms or whatever your diagnosis is, instead of waiting that year, that emotionally is going to get you more burnt out.
Right.
So it's not just the physical part, but the emotional part of from the get-go, you're saving yourself a lot of frustration during that year or those six months you're supposed to be trying and waiting and seeing and getting frustrated test after negative test after negative test.
Yeah. I could not agree with you more. Yes.
Yeah. So, well, then I went to the doctor and he said that I was 35, so I should do a hyperstimulation and an ovarian hyperstimulation to get the most eggs out of me and to freeze the ones we were not going to use. So I did that. I went in, my road was IVF from the get-go, not IU or some other procedure because of our condition. Right. So I got that, and the hormones were really hard on me, but my body was cooperating. I did yoga on that time. I was without knowing, I built my own team of experts. I had a nutritionist, I had an endocrinologist, I had my yoga teacher, and my best friend was a psychologist. So it was like
perfect.
Without knowing, I had my team, your
fertility team.
So correct. Yes, awesome. It was fairly easy. And I got 4 embryos out of my treatment. We froze 3 and 1 was transferred to me, and I got pregnant fairly easy.
Amazing.
That's my first daughter. And I was like, I cried a lot prior to this, but see, this seems to be a piece of cake. That it wasn't that hard. I got pregnant and now I'm starting my family. 2 years down the road, I'm ready. COVID hit. So we paused first to have our next treatment. And when we realized that this was not going to be a 50-day shutdown and that's it, that's when we decided we should go again with the next treatment. So my daughter was 1.5 years when I started it again. And I was very confident, since my experience was that this was a piece of cake. And I did not become conscious that all the things I did prior to it, like nutrition, exercise, psychology, everything helped. I just went in and the doctor said, you need to lose 5 pounds. I was like, that's easy. I can lose them and we'll start the treatment. Perfect. I started the treatment, but I was in a lot of stress with a baby, with COVID, with everything going on. I did not realize that my emotional state was going to affect the outcome so much.
Right.
So I got pregnant. My markers were very low at first. Then they went up. So we celebrated this.
When you say your markers, your beta test?
Yes.
Your HCG numbers? Okay.
Yes, numbers were very low. So at my first call with the doctor after the transfer was they're low, but probably it's because we did the test on the day 10 and maybe the implantation happened later on. So let's give it a couple of days and come back on 3 days. I went back and they're like, yeah, your numbers were really good now. They doubled, so you're pregnant. And I went and was very happy and very pregnant. And 4 weeks went by. And when I had to go do the ultrasound, I had some spotting, some bleeding. So I went scared to the doctor.
Right.
But I did the vaginal ultrasound and everything was clear. So it was maybe it was some residues or something, but you're pregnant. And then 1 day later, I was bleeding. And they sent me to bed rest, and I lost my baby on week 7 of my pregnancy, 7, 8.
So sorry.
Yes, it was awful. It was on my daughter's birthday. Everything got together. I was very emotional. We were preparing my 2-year-old now to blow her candles. She was very, very excited about it. And I was dealing with this. I want to be happy for you, but I'm really sad for the other part.
Right.
And I celebrate my daughter's life so much because it was so hard. And I think she's such a warrior that It was really, really hard at that time.
Yeah.
And then I lost that baby. And when I tried to get some explanation on what happened, but what went wrong or whatever, the doctor was like, yeah, sometimes these things happen. That was it. I went in immediately for a second treatment, and I had an unsuccessful treatment. And that's when I decided to pause, because emotionally I was not feeling good. I was like, if I lose another baby, please send me to the psychiatrist or something, because I'm losing it.
Can't take it.
Paused, and I healed. I started healing, and I started wondering, how is it that we women, we need to walk this so lonely? Because friends can help you, they can hug you, they can understand you to a point. But it's not, and a psychologist can also do that, but it's not the help you need. And that's when I found you. Like, I was starting to, women here need to be helped, to be understood, to be taken care of. And I don't see that with any of the people, because they haven't been through this.
Yeah, that's a similar, we've never had this conversation before, but it was after my first, after my first loss too, that I thought, okay, I'm going to change my life coaching business that I've had for 13 years at that time to work on fertility, because of that same exact thing, that people need to be supported.
Because the doctor's answer of, well, I'm sorry, but that's how it goes sometimes. So, and we need to prepare you for your next treatment. It was like, I haven't even grieved, and you're talking to me about something. I was really lost there.
Yeah, they treat it like it's just another day for them at work, and for us, it changes our life. You know?
Exactly. In fact, when I remember that time, it was Christmas. I love Christmas. It was December, and I remember it very gray, because I was not in a good emotional point.
Right.
So I started this healing process with you, and I understood that fertility has a lot of other points to be taken care of that don't include the lining of your uterus, or how well you are on your cycle day and what day you are, but it includes other things like how inflamed are you, or what are your sleep habits, are your stress, how high is it or not, your emotions, how are you emotionally, how are you spiritually. And once I understood that, and I started making these changes on myself, it's when I saw that with my first, when I was in my first treatment, I wrote letters to my daughter, to my spirit baby.
Oh, beautiful.
So without knowing it, I was talking to my spirit baby, because the whole process I was writing to her.
Yes.
And I understood that I did a lot of things without knowing, that are part of our coaching business.
Yes.
And that other people do them as well,
Yes, I always say to people that become coaches, you kind of already know that you're meant to be doing this before you're doing it. Like, there's always something in you. You're the one that people comes to talk to. You're the one that's proactive about the doctor's appointments. You're the one that is curious about learning about things, So, and the fact that you were already doing these things just means like it fell into the right place at the right time for you.
Yes. So I went back to yoga. I went back to healing, to eating well, I learned with you about the food intolerance test. I did that, and I lost weight so fast, because hormones did take a toll on me after the three previous treatments. So I got myself in a good health position to help others.
But I would say even prior to that, it wasn't that you had a lot of weight to lose. I just want to let people know that it wasn't as though you would see Irene and you thought, oh, she won't be able to get pregnant unless she loses weight. It wasn't about the weight. It was more about getting her body to a place where the inflammation was calm, and her body was able to receive the healthy situation that she was getting into. Because I think some people are told, oh, well, you need to lose weight in order to get pregnant. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there's extreme cases, but for the most part, that's not really it. It's really about how to get your body in a state where it's primed for conceiving, really.
Healthy eating, healthy doing everything. I was a size 12, a pant size 12, and I lost to a size 8. So I wasn't that overweight, but what I was, and I lost weight or inflammation so easily. In a month, I lost like 15 pounds,
Yeah.
7 kilos,
Yeah, I always use the example too for myself. You're just reminding me that when I did it first, I had been eating so much like fish and shrimp and all these things that I thought were healthy for me, and they were not. And as soon as I started eating right for me, which was like cheeseburgers and potatoes and French fries, all the things that I thought was bad, I lost 8 pounds right away. And you would think, oh my gosh, you went from eating salads and fish to meat and potatoes and I lost weight. And it just goes to show everybody's body is different. Everybody's body requires something for it to be in its optimal stage. And that's where finding out what your specific food intolerances are really just gets your body quickly to where it needs to be.
It's a game changer because it starts to react differently to every supplement you give your body, to the needles and the hormones. It starts receiving it without fighting other things, because you are on a really, doesn't matter how much you weigh, it matters that you are healthy.
Yes.
That you're giving your body what it needs to nurture it.
And there's degrees of that, right? So because people will say, well, I got pregnant and I didn't have to do that. And that's great if you did. But most of the people that we're talking to are either trying to get pregnant naturally and are not having success and are very frustrated and discouraged, or going through an IVF or IUI process. And it's frustrating. So we want to try to do everything that we can to tee up our body to be in the most successful, optimal, primed state as possible. So can it happen without doing it? Yes, but we want to have this like baby that comes that is healthy and the pregnancy stays and it's strong and all of those things. And in doing that and preparing our body by what we eat and the supplements we're taking and avoiding the inflammation, we're better off.
Yes, and there's also something that's very important for me, and it was the emotional part. Since I was a student at the FCA Coaching Academy, I learned a lot of tools with you on how to handle, how to help others. But since I was my first client, I was applying them to myself. And I think there's a difference, like a day and night difference between going through an IVF treatment by yourself with your family and friend support and everything, but not with a professional, and going through it with the help of a professional.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go back. So with going through the IVF process with a professional.
By yourself without the help of a professional, and going it with someone that knows where you're going through, that has gone through it, that knows your anguish and your stress and how nervous you are and how nerve-wracking it can be to be waiting in the operation room before going in to have your transfer. So having this support, having you text me like small messages or thinking about you, and having the tools that you gave me throughout the coaching sessions to do it, it's a game changer. Emotionally, I went in, and no matter how the result from my last embryo was going to be, I was very at peace with myself.
Yeah.
And I think that lightening the road is as more important as the nutrition part we've been talking about.
Absolutely. That's the one thing that I've heard so many times over the years is I feel more at peace and I feel more calm, even before they get their outcome. It's just if I could have $1 for every time I hear, I feel more at calm, I feel more at peace going into it. It really does make a difference. And there's studies that show that it does. So it's not just myself and Irene here saying that it does. There's been Harvard studies that have done work on this to show that it actually does make a difference in your journey.
It increases the probabilities of a pregnancy.
Yes.
During treatment. So, and even though if there were no studies, I can tell you after 4 treatments, having this support is worth every dollar,
Yeah, you are your own study, as you say.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
And a successful one. So
yes. So now you are 27
weeks.
27
Yes,
weeks. Amazing. With
yes.
a baby boy, which is so
Baby boy.
fun. Yes.
Yes, it was my last embryo, so that's the silver lining of all of this.
Beautiful.
But being a coach and being able to help other people has been such a blessing in my life to have people not walk the same path I did, which is so nerve-wracking and so hurtful, but to walk it and feel more light-weighted, like feel you're holding the hand of other people to go through it. It's a very good opportunity.
Yes, and I think people need to understand this is just a short time, right? It's you're just having that person for this time in your life. It's not going to be forever. This will be something that will pass, right? They say this too shall pass. And you will have this person to support you in this very small period of your life. When you're in it, it feels so heavy. It feels like it's going to be forever. And when will this ever change? I remember saying to my husband, I just want to talk about something else. I want to have a new conversation. I don't want to talk about how are we going to get pregnant? When am I ovulating? What are we doing next? Like, can we like I just wanted to move on with our life to something else. And when you have the support of a coach that's working through it, you have the outlet of someone other than your spouse or your partner as you're going through it. So it doesn't feel so heavy on the relationship when you're working through it. So I think in so many ways, it's a small period of time that feels like it's longer than it is, and you will get to the other side. And it's really a matter of how do you get that support so that it makes it easier and more calm and more peaceful when you're going through it.
It's a small period of time, but a very intense one.
Absolutely.
Yes.
There is very few things in life that are more intense because you don't hear about it much. So you're not prepared. You know, you hear people going through divorces, you hear people having heart attacks or having cancer. You don't really hear about people going through the infertility journey. And if you do, you don't really hear the
Emotional
the
aspect of it.
emotional aspect and the heaviness around it, right? So for getting back to Spanish speaking countries, Latin cultures, what do you think the biggest obstacle they have around fertility, maybe from an
I
emotional
think
standpoint and a medical standpoint?
I think there are a lot of challenges here, beginning with the access to medicine and to ovulation tests, for example. You don't have things like ovulation tests or progesterone tests or the home kits where you can measure the way your sperm works. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have access to that. You have to bring them through Amazon, and they're really expensive. So people tend to not do it.
Right.
Sex education here, the country, most Latin countries are very Catholic. So talking about sex is such a taboo, and
Mm.
it's such difficult. You have very high rates of teen pregnancies because you've not been educated about it. In fact, I was not educated about PCOS or other symptoms. It's like just take your birth control, and we don't ask things.
Right.
I think we have a better access to internet now, so that helps get information more out there and be more available for us. But the fact that it still is such a taboo to talk about things like infertility or challenges to conceive, that the emotion that brings a lot of stress to the people who are having challenges to get pregnant. So it's very difficult to talk about it.
Right.
Because pregnancy and motherhood here are so romanticized. It's like, oh, so you're waiting. That's so lovely, so sweet. It's
Mm.
like you need to be in this gracious state all along your pregnancy. And when you get married, it's like, oh, you're gonna have kids so fast. And people start like not addressing the elephant in the room.
Right.
Just like even in couples, you don't talk openly with your couple, like maybe we're having some challenges here.
Oh, gotcha. Mm-hmm.
So that's that. I think it's very difficult. You
Yeah.
have also the sexist factor here. And I've had a few clients like, yes, I don't know how to tell my husband to go and have his sperms tested,
Yeah.
because it's like you're emasculating them or something. And
Right.
really hard to open up with them, to like just go do your test, and that's not going to make you less of a man than if you have any problems, you know.
Right. I think part of that is just having a standard test, right? So that it just is. So it has nothing to do with the masculinity or not. It's we're getting ready to have a baby, you get your test, you get tested and I get tested, and it's not a
And
thing,
that's
right?
an
So that it
exact.
doesn't feel that way, because it's the same in, American culture as well. I think it's the conversation is more open probably than the Latin cultures probably still, but it is there to a degree. Like no man wants to find out that perhaps their sperm is not what
Yes.
they think it should be. But because we're having the conversations about it more and more, they're understanding that it's a thing and it's actually quite normal. And it's not, it doesn't mean that they're less of a man. It just means we need to help fix this situation.
So I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done here in Latin American countries,
Yeah.
that's not related to any religion, or that, they teach us to fear our reproductive system.
Right.
They teach us to, you have to avoid anything related to that, because you may get pregnant and you're too young or whatever. So
Yeah.
we think birth control pills are the best thing ever because it's going to prevent me from ruining my life when I'm
Right.
young.
Right.
And we don't know about the secondary effects. Well, I know now, but people don't. I have a lot
Right.
of debate with my younger cousins or nieces, and they're like, but my doctor says I'm going to get pregnant fairly and whatever. And
Same
it's like,
here. Same here.
it's really frustrating there because you're trying to
Yeah.
educate people. So
Right.
the education and the prevention, rather than okay, you have the illness now, the prevention, it's not spoken about so much.
Right.
So that's, I think, is key to know about our cycles, our periods, to respect them, to honor them, and to understand that it's our fifth vital sign.
Yeah, and it's not a religious issue, right? It's not anything about that. And I think that's I would probably need to go back and do some research on this because I haven't in a lot of years. But I do think actually the Catholic Church has changed some of their rules as of more recent, that it has changed. And I think it's educating the older generation as well, right? Of it is possible to change, because I think that they feel if they go against the what has been previously that the church quote unquote was saying is meant to be done, then they're going against God, right? And I think there's a way to educate both generations to say
Yeah.
this is no longer a religious issue here. And I think, again, I'd have to do some research because I don't want to speak out of turn, but also, you know, just the basic education of how our cycles work and what to look for, what are the red flags to know that you might have an issue. Because if at 15 and you've already had your cycle for a couple years, if you know that there's something that's off, you can address that earlier without getting on the pill. There are so many natural ways to
Yeah,
be able to fix things.
the pill is like a band-aid.
Yeah. And then you
So
have to deal with a bigger infection under that band-aid later,
exactly, but there's no education around that. So it's like kids when they felt cool because they were smoking cigarettes,
Yeah,
and you're like, I look so cool because I'm smoking. The
right.
same thing, but harming your reproductive system.
Exactly.
So I think that's a huge challenge here, the education part.
Yeah. And I know for a lot of people, and I was probably the same way, when you're young, you're not really thinking about that. You're just thinking about right now. Right now, I don't want to get pregnant. So right now, I'm going to do this, right? You're not thinking of the long-term effects of how this can really affect me. And the more
And
that the people around us have those conversations, so they know their aunt has gone through IVF and what that means, or they know, somebody else, they'll recognize, oh, okay, maybe I better think twice. I often say it's like the organic craze that we have in the US. Everybody's so quick to have organic meat and grass-fed butter and all of these things that are really nice and clean to put in our bodies, but yet we're we're stopping our reproductive system. We're putting hormones direct into our bodies with the birth control pill. So I think finding a way to speak to this younger generation so they understand as well that it's you can prevent pregnancy now in a way of understanding your cycle and doing other things. It doesn't have to be just the pill. We're not saying to people go out and get pregnant when you don't want to. Absolutely not. But that there's a way to understand it to move forward.
That there's a nice and kind way to take care of you.
Yes.
Prevent you to get pregnant when you don't want to, but
yes.
being kind to your body as well.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I am so happy to know that we have somebody that we can count on to help us into this other side of the world that is, sometimes unknown for us from the US. And like I said, there's so many Spanish speaking countries and Spanish speaking countries that are really doing a lot with IVF and fertility and all of those things. So the need for more and more people to show up in the world in that space from the Latin countries, I think, is huge. So thank you, Irene, for what you're doing.
Yes, and understanding one of the most my aha moment was understanding that infertility doesn't have to like make you it's not something you are like. I'm not infertile. I have a diagnosis,
right?
And that is such an important thing because you start to talk about other things then.
Absolutely. Okay. So thanks again, Irene, for being here, and we will talk soon. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Creation Innovation Podcast. Make sure to follow us on Spotify for free episodes and subscribe to the Creation Innovation Podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you choose to get your podcast. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening for a chance to receive a special gift. Yes, we actually do send out gifts. It's my favorite thing to do. So visit us at elizabethking.com/creation innovation for more information on how to enter. Every review counts, and we are so grateful. You can follow me at the official Elizabeth King on Instagram or TikTok. Until next time.